We're on page 20. We're going to go over the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, or the DSHEA, was established. It established regulations for dietary supplements that were different from those for drugs and conventional foods. It made manufacturers responsible for ensuring that their product was safe before they marketed the product. So adulteration and misbranding, again, were definitely prohibited at this point in 1994. The DSHEA Act required that if a product includes a new dietary ingredient, a pre-market review of safety data has to be done by the FDA. This is the only time that the pre-market review is actually required. Otherwise, the company does not need to provide the Food and Drug Administration with safety and efficacy data, and FDA approval is not needed prior to marketing. Once a supplement is marketed, the Food and Drug Administration is responsible for proving that it is unsafe before it can restrict use or pull it from the market. The key differentiating factor between a drug and a dietary supplement is the health claim of the product. So, drugs can claim to cure, to prevent, to correct, or treat a condition or a disease. Dietary supplements may only claim to address a nutrient deficiency. They could claim to support health, or they could be linked to body functions, like, for example, structure or function claims. So if a supplement says that it supports intestinal health, right, like a probiotic, that is acceptable, but you could not say it treats gastrointestinal infection, okay? So if a structure and a function claim is made, the product has to include a disclaimer, see the image below, that the FDA has not evaluated the claim. So it would say, this drug has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. And supporting research needs to back up any claims made in advertising or package labeling. Information that must be on a dietary supplement label includes a description, a descriptive name of the product. So again, information that must be on the supplement label, dietary supplement label, includes a descriptive name of the product, the word supplement, or the word dietary supplement. It also must include on the label the name and the address of the manufacturer, or of the packer or the distributor. It also must contain a complete list of ingredients and the net contents, which is the amount in the container. So each dietary supplement, with the exception of some small volume products or those produced by eligible small businesses, must include the supplemental facts box on the label. The next act we're going to review, we're about the bottom of page 20, is the FDA Modernization Act of 1997. This required the establishment of a registry for clinical trials. Right, so again, the FDA Modernization Act of 1997 required the establishment of a registry for clinical trials. So this is available at clinicaltrials.gov. This FDA Modernization Act enabled the manufacturer to discuss off-label drug use. Right, so it enabled the manufacturer to discuss off-label drug use when requested. And let's see. And it extended an amendment which was, it says, passed previously, that permits the FDA to charge a manufacturer fee to expedite the drug review process. So the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, or the PDUFA. So again, this FDA Modernization Act, or FDAMA, required the establishment of a registry for clinical trials. It enabled the manufacturer to discuss off-label drug usages when requested, and extended an amendment passed previously, the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, or PDUFA, that permits the FDA to charge a manufacturer fee to expedite the drug review process. So this FDA Modernization Act, or FDAMA, I guess would be the best way to say it. This Modernization Act of 1997, it made a special exemption for compounding pharmacists to continue the preparation of individualized drug products that were not otherwise available. Going to page 21. Previously, under the Durham-Humphrey Amendment, all prescription, let's see where that was. So the Durham-Humphrey was back at the top of page 16. Previously, under the Durham-Humphrey Amendment, all of the legend or prescription drugs required the label. That included the statement, "Caution, federal law prohibits dispensing without a prescription." And under this FDAMA, the Modernization Act, the word was simplified to say RX only in 1997. So the FDAMA, the Modernization Act of 1997, it essentially updated regulations for expedited approvals of high priority medications. Again, yeah, so this Modernization Act updated regulations for expedited approvals of high priority medications. The Food and Drug Administration now has 4 programs to help speed development and review of new drugs. So they have the fast track designation. This is where drugs to treat serious conditions and fill unmet needs are fast tracked. Then secondly, there's the breakthrough therapy designation. Drugs showing substantial improvement over current therapy are put into this designation. Thirdly, there's the accelerated approval track. And so here, approval can be based on a surrogate endpoint to meet an urgent need. And then fourthly, there's the priority review designation, where the FDA will review it within 6 months. So again, there's the updated regulations, 4 of them here, for expedited approvals of high priority meds. Again, there's 4 different programs to help speed development and review the new drugs. Fast track, breakthrough therapy designation, accelerated approval, and priority review designation. All right, so we're moving to the middle of page 21. So we have the Drug Addiction Treatment Act of 2000. So as we know, opioid use disorder, it's pretty widespread across the United States. So prior to the DATA 2000 Act, the Drug Addiction Treatment Act of 2000, the primary treatment used was methadone, which was available only through a DEA registered opioid treatment program. So DATA 2000 permitted physicians to prescribe and dispense controlled substances in an office-based setting. That's right. So yeah, this is the Drug Addiction Treatment Act of 2000, the DATA 2000. So prior to this, the primary treatment again was methadone. It was available through the DEA registered opioid treatment program. Now this act, DATA 2000, permitted physicians to prescribe and dispense controlled substances in an office-based setting to treat opioid use disorder, which would improve access to treatment. Then in 2016, the CARA, Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, allowed nurse practitioners and physician assistants to treat patients for opioid use disorder as well. This is described further under the opioid treatment programs, the OTPs, in the controlled substances chapters. We're going to keep going on page 21. So here we have the FDA Amendments Act, the FDAAA of 2007. This gave new authority to the Food and Drug Administration to enhance drug safety. The Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy, the REMS program, was part of this legislation. Right, so again, we have the FDA Amendments Act, FDAAA of 2007, which gave new authority to the Food and Drug Administration to enhance drug safety. Now the Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy, the REMS program, was part of this 2007 Amendments Act, A medication for which the Food and Drug Administration requires a REMS program or REMS program will require more involvement from the manufacturer, the distributor, the prescriber, the pharmacist, and the patient to ensure that the benefits of the drug or the biologic outweigh the risks. This can include various types of education and monitoring. Yep, so we know that. Now we're moving to the bottom of page 21, and we're looking at the Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act of 2009. So as we know, biologics, they are derived from living organisms like microorganisms, yeast, animals, and they include vaccines, insulin, human growth hormone, erythropoietin, interferons, amongst others. So most specialty products are biologics. Conventional drugs like aspirin and lisinopril are small molecules and chemically derived. Biologics are large molecules and have a complex manufacturing process. So only living organisms reproduce with this level of complexity. And there is some degree of variability even among the same biologic product. Now, true generics for biologics are not possible according to the conventional definition, so the term biosimilar is used instead. The cost of biosimilar approval is about 20 to 35% lower than the reference biologic, which is less than the cost savings expected with conventional drug generic approval, which is about a 75% cost savings. Considering the high cost of the original biologic, the savings is still considerable. The Food and Drug Administration was slow to develop a biosimilar approval process. Biosimilars have been used in Europe since 2003, and they are usually approved a few years after the reference biologic product. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration has approved a few biosimilars under the ANDA pathway in the past. Right, so in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration approved a few biosimilars under the abbreviated New Drug Application Pathway in the past, the ANDA pathway, but these were not rated as therapeutically equivalent. Moving to page 22, the Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act, the BPCI, Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act originated in 2009. And it was passed in 2010 as part of the Affordable Care Act. Now, the Biologics Price Competition and Innovation, the BPCI Act, it created an abbreviated licensure pathway for biological products that are demonstrated to be biosimilar to or interchangeable with an FDA-approved biological product. So let me say that again. So this Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act in 2009, it created an abbreviated licensure pathway for biological products that are demonstrated to be biosimilar to or interchangeable with the FDA-approved biological product. The legislation permits biosimilars to be approved without full preclinical and clinical data. The biosimilar must have the same mechanism of action, route of administration, dosage form, and strength as the reference product, and will only be approved for the indications of the reference biologic. Similar to the Orange Book, which is used for therapeutic drug interchange, biologic interchange information can be found in the Purple Book, officially called the List of Licensed Biological Products with Reference Product Exclusivity and Biosimilarity or Interchangeability Evaluations. Let's keep going. We're at the middle of page 22. So the Affordable Care Act of 2010, ACA, Affordable Care Act of 2010, it includes many provisions that are important to pharmacists. So some examples that impact the pharmacy would include the CMS Innovation Centers, accountable care organizations, essential health benefits, which includes prescription drugs and chronic disease management, integrated care models, care transitions programs, improvements to Medicare Part D, medication therapy management, MTM, hospital value-based purchasing, payments based on quality of care and not quantity. So at the bottom of page 22, we have the Drug Quality and Security Act of 2013, or the DQSA. So in 2012, an outbreak of fungal meningitis affected over 700 people, and it caused over 60 deaths. It was tied to improper practices at the New England Compounding Center. The tragedy led Congress to pass this DQSA, the Drug Quality and Security Act of 2013, as an amendment to the FDCA. Again, the FDCA is the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. So again, this DQSA is an amendment to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. Now, the DQSA consists of the Compounding Quality Act and the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. The Compounding Quality Act essentially gave the FDA increased authority to regulate compounding. The law makes a distinction between traditional compounders 503A, who compound for an individual patient based on a prescription, and the 503B outsourcing facilities, who typically make larger batches of sterile compounds that are distributed to hospitals and other facilities. 503B regulations, they do not require that prescriptions be obtained for individual patients. So if a facility compounds sterile drugs for humans, they can register as an outsourcing facility under 503B. Drugs compounded by an outsourcing facility are exempt from the FDA's new drug approval process and certain labeling requirements, but the facility needs to comply with the good manufacturing processes. They have to also, the facility needs to report adverse events and provide the Food and Drug Administration certain information about their products. Moving to page 23, to prevent counterfeit drugs from entering the market, the Drug Supply Chain Security Act established track and trace requirements to document the transactions of prescription drug products through the pharmaceutical supply distribution chain. Now, records must be kept for 6 years and must include transaction information, history, and statements. All right, so we're in the middle of page 23. We're looking at Pregnancy and Lactation Labeling Final Rule 2014. Now, the Pregnancy and Lactation Labeling Final Rule, PLLR, this essentially changed the drug labeling requirements for pregnancy and nursing. Previously, there were pregnancy categories of A, B, C, D, and X, but those should no longer be used. Information is now placed into new categories designed to provide more useful information about health risks. Drugs approved after June 30th of 2001 are required to use the new labeling requirements. If a drug was approved prior to this date, the only change required in the labeling is to remove the letter category. The new format places information into 3 categories. So we have pregnancy as one category, lactation as another category, and the third category is females and males of reproductive potential. So let's read through these. So the first category under this pregnancy and lactation labeling rule is pregnancy. So labor and delivery guidelines fall under this category, which includes information for pregnancy exposure registries. Second, we have lactation. It was previously labeled nursing mothers. This category of lactation provides information such as how much drug is secreted through breast milk and the potential effects on a breastfed infant. The third category, so let's read through this. It's called females and males of reproductive potential. This is a new category that includes information on the need for pregnancy testing and contraception recommendations, as well as infertility. All right, let's go to the bottom of page 23. This is the last act in this 8th edition book. So the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act of 2016 is CARA, C-A-R-A. This is an amendment to the Controlled Substances Act. It authorized funding for prevention and education, expanded availability of naloxone and medication-assisted treatment programs, and it strengthened prescription drug monitoring in response to the opioid epidemic. Unused and leftover opioids can find their way into the hands of others, which is a key contributor to the opioid crisis. CARA permits pharmacists to partially fill Schedule II drugs at the request of the patient or prescriber. Previously, before CARA, Schedule II prescriptions could only be partially filled if the pharmacy was unable to dispense the full quantity or if the patient was in a long-term care facility. Any remaining opioids have to be filled within 30 days from the date that the prescription was written. Previous law regarding Schedule 3, 4, and 5, it does still apply. For example, partial fills are permitted for Schedules 3, 4, and 5 for up to 6 months from the issue date. Not all states have added this partial fill option to their legal statutes, however. So this sums up all of the different acts and amendments in the Pharmacy Laws and Regulations, Chapter 2. This is the UWorld RX Prep 8th edition MPJE Federal Review Material. And then on the next couple pages, there's the timeline of key pharmacy laws and amendments and acts. So page 24 and 25, we can just view on our own, and we'll take a break here.